Open your Bible with me to 1 Corinthians 15th chapter, if you will. The title of my message is Heaven Will Be Worth It All. Okay? Everybody awake?
Amen. Yes.
All right. I just want to make sure Justin's awake. He's laying down over there. You awake? Just want to make sure. We go through a lot through the lives I was talking about this morning, and be a little bit more like that this evening. But the message is hopefully encouragement to don't give up, just keep going. Kind of like an older lady. In fact, one of the reasons I came to church, the church that I was saved at, and this lady was like about my age at that time, was knocking doors with another couple of ladies, and Miss Young. And she was a dedicated, hard-working lady. Even at her age, she would never let up. And I was getting ready to leave that church. I'd already surrendered, worked there 18 months as an associate to the pastor, and I was moving out to my next place in Humble to work actually 6 more months with Brother Don Warren. And she told me this story, said, don't ever give up. And she said, there's 2 frogs in a glass of water. And they're kicking and kicking and kicking. And boy, one said, I don't think I'm going to make it. I was just about had it. He said, oh, don't give up. Keep kicking. And they kicked a little bit longer and said, I'm not going to make it. He said, no, just keep kicking. After a while, I looked over and that one drowned, dead. And he kept kicking, and the cat came along, kicked the glass over. Something would come loose after a while. Just keep kicking. Not in the wrong way. Just keep going. In 1 Corinthians 15:58 says, therefore, my beloved brethren, be ye steadfast, unmovable, always abounding in the work of the Lord, for as much as you know that your labor is not in vain in the Lord. Don't give up. Your work is not empty. It's not a vain work. It's counting, and the Lord's keeping record of that. I think some people are very good about keeping records of their life, what goes on, and write diaries, and I just never was. I never got off to a start in that, so I never have been a good one to keep records. Someone asked me last week if I kept records of everybody I had a wedding for or funerals. I said, no, I just let the Lord take care of those records. I don't really try to keep them. I have some. And they said, you rather preach a wedding or a funeral? I said, I'd rather preach a funeral. They're more permanent. I had one wedding the last 30 days, so I thought, well, I don't know. Some weddings last a long time, but some don't last very long. And that's not my fault. I tell them, I give them the vows, and they don't believe them, so God be with them. You know, in Galatians, Paul said, let us not be weary in well-doing, for in due season we shall reap if we faint not. Galatians chapter 6, verse 9. If we don't give up, if we don't faint. I may have told you a story about my sister and I. I guess I was about 12, she was about 16. My grandmother got hurt, her face was bleeding, and so she was going to help me, and we're going to clean my grandmother's face, you know. Next thing I knew, she was laying on the floor out. And so I went ahead and did it myself, and then she came to, I said, "You're useless, you know it." You was no help whatsoever. Well, and that's the way it is with Christians. Sometimes the work gets heavy. When you're really needing them, they're not there. They don't see the value of the work sometimes. And sometimes, you know, you can do it. You don't need me. You can do it. That's not even the point. The point is that you can help out. The load's a lot lighter. If you'll notice, when you go to a funeral, they have 6 pallbearers, and that makes the load easier. Sometimes it's a pretty good size individual died. So 6 men and carry that body to the grave. It makes it easier. More hands on the work, you know, willing to help. Whatever the work is, the easier. But he said, let us not be weary in well-doing. And with the work we got is work that's well-doing. And we don't need to faint, give up. I get tired sometimes, just like you do. And one thing that I personally cannot stand, and I have to fight being angry about it, if someone tells me they'll be here and they don't even show up, or they don't call, they don't, like it's no big deal. It is to me. And my word is good as whatever I make my word to be good. I could write a list of certain individuals that I would not count on. And don't care how much they swear up and down they're going to be there or do that or do this. I'll believe it when I see them, because they've proven to me to not be consistent or dependable. I believe that you should do what you say you'll do. A lot of kids are hurting today because parents are liars. They promise them whatever and then they don't do it, and they don't explain why. And after a while, those kids get so used to that, they don't expect their parent to do it anyway, because they already lied to them so many times. All I can say, if you are a parent or a grandparent, if you promise your kid or grandkid that you'll do something, either do it, break your neck doing it, or give them a good reason as to why you can't do it. And sometimes it may be considered like giving them a rain check because you just could not. But don't just let them go like, hey, they're not that big a deal. They'll understand. No, they don't. They just like you. After a while, they get the feelings that you don't really care. And you'd be surprised at the number of kids that's told me that very thing over my years of ministry, that my mom and my dad don't really care. And that's all it's all about, because they showed them they didn't really care by not doing what they said, or at least explaining why they didn't. You know, it's worth everything that you can do to carry out what the Lord's call on you to do. And you'll be glad when you get to heaven. You'll be glad that you did it. It'll be worth all the sorrows that we go through and will go through. You know, sorrows of discouragements. And they're there. And sometimes our expectations may be higher than they should be, but we get discouraged. And actually, sometimes people do give up. I've known preachers that quit, discouraged so that I'm just going to quit. Well, I made up my mind by God's grace that would never happen to me. If I was the last person standing, that I wouldn't be a quitter. I believe God called me for my ministry to do what I do, and He didn't say what I did would abound in great numbers or whatever. He just told me, I want you to do it. And I've pastored. I've started out with churches where they had 6 people. I had started out one that had 25. And this one here went the wrong way. Ours went up. I think we need to go back to 6 or 8 so we can go up. I don't know what the deal is. This is the only church I've ever pastored where I had a lot of people leave. Never had, everywhere I've been, I had them mad at me, but they were good soldiers. They weren't traitors. They weren't turning their back on you just because they don't agree with you. They stood because they knew that's where the Lord wanted them to be. And this is the only church I've had people quit for the wrong reasons. And so God be with us that we don't quit ourselves, because it'd be easy when you see good, faithful Christians walk out and stop doing what they've been doing without any reasoning, dropping the ball. I can just see Kevin Durant is supposedly the best basketball player in the NBA. I can just see them out there in the middle of a game, and he just gets discouraged and just walks off and quits right in the middle of the game, leaves his other teammates there standing looking, well, what in the world going on? Well, you didn't pass me the ball. I was wide open. Anything will do. But let me tell you, like Brother David Locke said, and this is true with me, I've never seen anyone leave a church that I've pastored over a doctrinal issue. It's always some trivial thing that should not ever cause me or you to leave. You're going to get discouraged. Whenever Elijah, as we talked about him recently, and all that great victory he had over all those false prophets, and then this woman Jezebel that just told him he'll die. You're going to die by this time tomorrow, and he gets discouraged, and he runs and sits down under a juniper tree, and anything can discourage you. And I'm not looking at myself being above it, but I'm telling you that God is above it, and discouragements come. Sorrow and disappointments, those things are going to be. I think whenever those women came to the burial place of the Lord Jesus and he wasn't in there, can you imagine what that might have been like for them? Because he was buried there, and disappointing, and they where is he? I can't really imagine that, but that's just the way it was. Is for a period of time they were discouraged and they were disappointed until the Lord showed himself to them. No, I don't know if there's anything that probably brings more sorrow than separation by death of someone you really love and care for. For me, it was my granny, my dad's mother, because she was my very best friend. And I was a kid. I was 14 when she died, but I was her kid. And when she died, I don't think I've ever had sorrow like I had then. I didn't know the Lord, and in fact, I didn't know Him until I was 30. But I grieved more than probably I'll ever grieve again, because of the fact that I didn't know the Lord, the reason, but I lost my very best friend. And I went through an awful long time of sorrow over her death. I dreamed about her. Sometimes I'd dream and she was there and we were having the same old good time. I wake up and I just hated it. I woke up and she wasn't there, I don't know how many years. Someone said the other day, I mentioned her and said, you think of her a lot. I said, yeah, every day. That was the best friend I had on earth, and that's in 1952 that she died. You say, wow, you'd think you'd never, I'm not sorrow over the death anymore. I was up until I knew the Lord, but the sorrow over death is heavy sometimes. Well, it'll be worth it all. In due course of time, we'll get to be in heaven and reunited with all our loved ones that know Jesus. It'll be worth all the sufferings that we go through. Paul said, let no man trouble me. Paul, if you've been in the church very long, you know he didn't have an easy road to travel. Paul was constantly in trouble because he preached the truth. And people didn't like him, wanted to kill him, and tried to kill him, and just beat him. He's been there. I can't imagine what his body must have looked like after all the marks that was placed on it because of the beatings and the different things he went through. He said, "They don't trouble me. I'm going to preach the gospel." And that time when he was left for dead there on the streets and got up and went on some other town, I forgot now, I think it's Derby where he was anyway, he preached down there so long and around and came right back to the same place where they stoned him and left him for dead. No man trouble me. I'm just going to keep preaching the gospel. I will die preaching the gospel, and basically his words. There's sometimes mental suffering. You know, I hear people all the time talking about, "Boy, I just can't sleep." And then you get to question those people, and the reason they can't sleep is mentally their minds are absorbed with something that's hurting them. A lot of times, it's someone is really hurting them. They can't get it out of their mind, and they can't sleep. They just toss and turn, and if they do sleep a little, they wake up thinking of the same thing. That's really mental suffering. There's a lot of that. I can give you a piece of advice. If you go to bed and can't go to sleep, talk to Jesus and just keep talking to him about everything you can think of. First thing you know, you'll wake up in the morning. It's just something about praying and talking to him that brings peace in our minds, and we can sleep. I don't know if you've ever done this, but I've gone to bed praying and I wake up in the middle of the night, pick up where I guess I picked up right where I left off and start praying again and go right back to sleep. I remember a time when I couldn't sleep because of problems in the church, and I'd be thinking, why did they do this? Why is this? Why can't we work together? Why can't it be a good? And I couldn't sleep, you know, wear me out. And then I learned to turn it over to the Lord, just pray and talk to him and say, you know, that's your person, that man or woman, whoever it is, that's yours. I don't have no right to sit here and try to think I'm their God. I'm not going to control them, and they're not going to control me, so God help them, help me, and help us all so we can get along. Suffering mentally is awful, and some people actually go crazy. It drives them out of their mind. I apologize to you if I repeat myself, but this happened to me. I was in the Air Force, and it absolutely almost put me totally out of my mind because I liked this guy. I liked all these guys. We were good. In the Air Force, we were together all the time, and I thought we could joke around and have fun, and so I walked in the room where his room, we were going to just kind of have a little time together. About 5 of us. And when I opened the door and I said something, he said, "You're always running your mouth, aren't you?" And that just like you could have hit me with your fist and I'd have got over it. But all I could think, you're always running your mouth, aren't you? You're always running your mouth, aren't you? You're always, and that went over in my mind. I got to the point to where I could be right that close, trying to listen to someone tell me something, and all I'm hearing, you're always running your mind, aren't you? I mean, your mouth, aren't you? And I couldn't get it out. One of my best friends that was in that same room, he didn't know that was going on. We went out and ate at the chow hall, and he told me something 3 times. I never did comprehend it. I said, "I'm sorry, what? You're always running your mind, aren't you?" And that would drove me totally, nearly out of, totally crazy. And I never told anyone And I didn't know how I was going to get out of it either, because I didn't know. And finally, they needed someone to work part-time in a airman's club, and I went to work in there, and I didn't have time to think. You're always running your mind. Give me a Bud, give me a Lone Star. All I heard is all that. And believe it or not, it got my mind cleared up while listening to all these orders. Give me a hamburger, give me a hot dog, give me this. And that's what, I didn't know the Lord, folks. I'm telling you, mental suffering is awful. And you need to be careful about how much you let someone's words into your mind, because that can hurt you. And then, of course, there's spiritual sufferings. It's hard to remember and always continually remember Romans 8:28, isn't it? Where all things work together. We forget that whatever is happening at that particular moment is working together for good with all the other things that's taking place before or after. And we just see that one thing, and we begin to suffer spiritually over that one thing. Don't let the devil win. He's happy when he's seeing you suffering. It'll be worth all the separations that we go through. You know, I don't know how it was for my mother. My mother had 12 children. She had 3 babies. Two of them were dead at birth, and then she lost one. I think it's 6 weeks. I don't remember exactly. I wasn't old enough to remember that one, but I can't imagine what it'd be like. You carry a baby 9 months and then it's born dead, or they didn't have doctors back then. I'm sure they would have saved the 2 because the cord was wrapped around their neck, and they had to, whatever you call the ladies, it's really nice to be there to help. Anyway, I don't know what it was like for her. She had one girl that almost died from rheumatic fever, still living now. And then one that's a year younger than me had tumors. They were non-malignant, but they nevertheless caused her to lose her. She couldn't walk. So they found out where they were, and they got them all out of her back and under her shoulder blade and all these things. I don't know what it's like for a mother with that many kids anyway. One kid would be a heartache anyway. One of my brothers asked my mother which one was her favorite, which kid was her favorite. My mother said, the one that needs me at the moment. That was my mom too. She was always there at the moment. I was a little boy, I guess even until I was about 8 years old, I had earaches every night. I just cry with earaches, and my mother would always be in there trying whatever remedy to stop the earaches. You know, it'll be worth it all. Just stay with it. When my mom died, I lost a good mom. Separation sometimes can be really hard, but especially from our loved ones, but knowing that they know the Lord. I'm dealing with a person right now, not a member here. Her daddy died, and she's having a hard time. And I said, well, and this is a normal statement, right? He's better off. He's not suffering anymore. He's with the Lord. Her words was, I get tired of hearing those kind of words. I still miss my daddy. Well, I said, well, whatever you're dealing with, only you and the Lord really know, because you should really be happy that your dad's not suffering any longer. And all I can tell you is I'll be praying for you. Suffering, lives in a low one is extremely difficult. But it'll be worth it all. I was growing up in Tom, Oklahoma, where my mom, dad, and uncle, and my grandmother and grandpa all buried, and a lot of times just drive down there and they're all right there in a row practically. My brothers, I got 3 brothers buried there, and brother-in-laws. And they all claim to know the Lord Jesus, so, one day will be a great reunion day for us too. But it'll be worth it all. The sacrifices that we give, our time. I don't know if I say too much about myself, but I don't mean to say it in the wrong way. I get tired as anybody. Sometimes I'm so doggone tired I don't want to even get out of the bed, but I know I need to get up and go. Yesterday was one of those times when I'd had 4 hours sleep, and I thought I was just not going to get up, but I know my wife needs me, and so, I had a hard time getting started, but I just take cold water and wake me up a little. But sometimes, you just have to go when you're not even, your energy level is absolutely nearly to zero. But you're a preacher or you're a close friend, and you just know you're going to go no matter what. God has used me in these things, and I know times when I've gone to emergency rooms and I just, oh God, oh Lord, why did this have to happen now? I'm so tired. But you go. You're not mad at the people that's over there or aggravated. It's just your body saying, I need more rest. Well, if you're a servant of God, you may have to be where you don't want to be at times. Just go. It'll be worth it all. When you sacrifice your time, when you sacrifice, sometimes it's a lot of tears. I don't know why I weep. God only knows. But God gives me a heart of tenderness, and I'm glad I'm not hard-hearted, but I can tell you, sometimes I wish I didn't cry as much. Someone starts telling me about their problems, and doggone it, I'm sitting there crying, and I don't even know they're people. And it's just a tender heart that God put in me, because I used to not be that way. But you know what? It'll be worth it all the tears that you shed because of the sacrifices that go on, all the hard work. And sometimes I take these guys on these roofs. Believe me, I'm thankful to God for them. I couldn't get up there, but I can tell you these guys got up there and they worked hard all day long, and I'm grateful to God for the efforts that they put out. They gave their time and their toil to see that this church doesn't leak. And I'm grateful people, I'm telling you. I feel bad. I've always been one that's up there. I'm not too good, but up there. I feel bad sometimes now that I can't do what I used to do and be right there. I just have to walk away and go on. But I'm grateful to these men and these women that put out a lot of time and work and effort to see that the men were fed. It might seem like a sacrifice sometimes that you go visiting, you're witnessing to someone. Psalms 126:6 says, He that goeth forth and weepeth, bearing precious seed, shall doubtless come again with rejoicing, bringing his sheaves with him. I quoted a verse, reaping what you sow, yesterday to a person. And I said to this person that you reap a whole lot more than you sow. You think you're just going to reap back what you sowed, but I said the illustration that's there is the farmer when he sowed one seed. He doesn't get one seed back. He reaps a lot more. And this person that goes forth weeping, I read the story of how that came about. I guess it's true how, they gather all their crops and they have to have a certain amount of seed out of that for the next crop. And then they have a certain amount of all of it for their food, for their children, their wife, their family. And as the year wears down from between time to sow again, gradually they see all of that food part disappearing, and they're down to the very seeds that they got to sow to have another crop. And they're thinking about my kids are hungry, but I gotta sow these seeds. We can't eat these or we won't have anything. And so they go forth weeping because of their kids. But then they doubtless do come again with rejoicing in the future, bringing a lot of more sheaves with them. You will too. You win one person to the Lord, you have no idea how many is going to be coming because of that one. Don't give up on anyone either. And I say this from experience. I gave up on my second oldest brother. I said I witnessed him so many times. I helped him every way I could, and I knew how. And I mean, it's just like talking to that wall over there. But over a period of time, he had 5 boys by his 5th wife. And one of them's named Sean. And all those boys, as far as I know, accepted Jesus Christ, but Sean also surrendered his life to the ministry and went to college in Conway, Arkansas, become a minister. And he's living in Texarkana, just like it was with me when my brother would come always to me. Then he turned to Sean. And Sean said, right at his front door, didn't invite him in, he said, "What you need, Dad, is Jesus Christ." And of course my brother said, kind of like an angry way, he said, "Well, just tell me about him then." And he went in, he won him to the Lord. And not only did he win him to the Lord, he wasn't pastoring the church in Texarkana, he was just a member, but the pastor let him baptize him. And when his dad died 5 years later, he preached part of the funeral and apologized to Uncle Earl because he didn't have me included. I said, I'm a happy man that God used you to win your dad to the Lord. Because of the one kid, his dad was saved. I don't know how many others may be saved. Sean's a worker, a hard-working kid. Well, don't give up. Heaven will be worth it all. Sometimes just a little rugged around. I saw a girl yesterday, I guess it was, and she had on short jeans like this right here, and hanging down from them short jeans was the wore out parts of the legs, I guess where she'd cut them off. Strings, looked pretty rugged. We may look like that before it's over, but let's keep on going. Let's stand and we'll be dismissed. I told her, I said, I'm going to get my church to take up an offer and get you some new short pants. Brother Gary, would you word our prayer?